Michelle Swain Clawberg. The name of a session is Dynamic Duos, Batman and Robin, Chocolate and Peanut Butter, Church and School. Today's Saturday, I think. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How is everyone doing today? I want to thank all of you for being here. When I saw my session time, I was like, could they have put me at a worse time? Because the last day, the earliest session, seems like a bad plan. But I'm excited to see all of you here. I've been to Best Practices one other time. I was here the year that it rained. This is so much better. So much better. So anyway, you can imagine all of Phoenix is really set up for outdoor things. Like even the restaurant I went to last night, I didn't eat here, was set up for like outdoor seating. And so in the rain, it was miserable. I mean, we were like all cramped into very small spaces. Anyway, I wanted to take a couple of minutes and introduce myself. My name is Michelle. And I serve at King of Glory Lutheran Church and School in Williamsburg, Virginia. So Williamsburg is a very historic area. Lots and lots and lots of talk about the founding people coming from England. Lots of settlement. Lots of recent talk about how the settlers came in and worked together with those who were here natively, and then how other communities also were brought to Virginia in good ways and bad ways. So we have, there's a picture up here of this is called the Palace. It's the Palace Green. This is a pretty key place in Williamsburg. Lots of people love to go down there and sit. It's a nice location to hang out. If you ever want to go on vacation to Williamsburg, it's a very nice little town to be in. I love Disney World. So I have a picture up there of Disney. I ran the Disney Marathon when I turned 50. Some people go on vacation when they turn 50. I decided, hey, let's run a marathon. And I actually had a couple of crazy friends who joined me. So it was actually a really fun trip. That's a picture of Virginia Beach because it's very close to where we are. So I thought those of you who live out here on the West Coast, that's the other coast beach. So that's a sunrise, not a sunset. And I love coffee, so I have Starbucks up there. I used to have Dunkin' up there, but then the Dunkin' in our town had a horrible staffing crisis, and it would take almost 40 minutes to get coffee. And I found out quickly I had a limit to how long I was going to wait for coffee, although I put up with it for way too long. And then I was like, okay, that's enough. I want to take an opportunity to introduce one of my teammates who's here today. Harry Grimes is in the back. He is our children's minister. He's a DCE by trade, and he has been a great addition, has been at King of Glory for a couple of years. He and I work very closely together, so you'll hear more about his role at King of Glory and some of the exciting things that we've done there. So now it's going to be your turn because it's the last day in the first session, so I can't just sit here and talk to you. So I'm going to have you guys throughout the morning spend time getting to know each other, because I think one of the most valuable things at any conference is getting to meet other people. So take a couple of minutes. We'll do like 2 minutes to find somebody you don't already know and introduce yourself, tell them what your role is, a little bit about yourself. Okay, go. with this group, we could just do that for the whole hour. I know, I should bring a horn or something. I don't remember the song they were singing now. So remember the person you were talking to. I want you to go back to that person throughout the morning so that you guys can share some ideas of what's working and maybe some of the struggles that you're having in your current location. Just so I have a good idea as to who is here today, raise your hand if you are a DCE. Great, welcome. Thank you for your service to the Lord. Raise your hand if you are a school director. Great. Thank you for your service to the Lord. How about teachers? Oh, look, lots of teachers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you lots. Not that everybody else doesn't deserve 3 thank yous, but I'm a school director and teachers are what a crazy couple of years. So thank you for your continued service. How about pastors? I intentionally put you guys last because people always put you first. No. I'm just teasing. I love pastors. Thank you for coming. What a great witness that is for your team to want to grow that connection and teamwork in your own location. Okay, so let's talk about teams. Thank you to those of you who did the polls. How fun is that? I could think of all kinds of things to put down, but I decided not to. So what are some great teams that you guys know about? These are the ones that were on the poll. So it's the Nebraska Cornhuskers, St. Louis Cardinals, the Mike and Tracy morning show, which I really appreciated somebody putting down, because what an amazing duo to not have an entire team but just 2 people. I think that's a neat example. Green Bay Packers, and my favorite is the Chicago Cubs, because whoever put it down put a specific date. Because the Chicago Cubs aren't always a great team, but sometimes they are. What are some other great teams that you know?
Laurel and Hardy.
Laurel and Hardy. He has a lot of good teams because he's already told me a couple of them. What else?
Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and Clark. That's a great historical team. What else? Anybody else? How about hockey teams? Come on, we just had the Winter Olympics.
1980 U.S. Olympic hockey.
Yes, a specific date again. Yes, like that. I think hockey is amazing. It's just an amazing sport to watch.
Ernie and Bert.
Ah, that's a nice team. They're so friendly to each other. What are some things that make any of these teams great? When you think of them, why did you mention those teams? I'm a horrible speller, but I'm going to try to write this stuff down. Talent?
Care.
Did you say care?
Care. They care for each
Oh, care.
Communication.
Complement. They complement one another. Success.
You can see, as I go, I write worse because something came after communication before complement. This thing doesn't work very well. Okay, what else? Anything else you guys can think of?
Compassion.
Lots of C words.
Trust.
You got to trust that that guy's going to catch the ball when you throw it. Okay, anything else?
They work together for a common goal.
I don't want you to answer this, but something to think about is in your own ministry teams, how many of these do you check off? How many of these are strong? Which one's the strongest? Which one do you still need to work on? A lot of these are going to come up during my presentation this morning, but thank you for sharing those thoughts on what makes a good team or great. So here are some characteristics of a great team. I unfortunately did not put my slides on the app because I just didn't do it. But I have my email at the end of the presentation, so don't feel like you have to write all this down. I'm happy to send you these slides. So I've got 5 characteristics. If you look up great teams, you can find, 50 characteristics. And it also depends on which kinds of teams you're looking at. So these are pretty broad categories. At number 5, we have shared vision. 4, communication. 3, organizational structure. 2, events. And 1, shared celebrations. I have it organized in this way because lots of people do events and shared celebrations without the foundational shared mission and vision. And then a lot of times that just leads to frustration or a lack of communication or differing goals. So it's really important to start with that foundation of a shared mission and vision between the church and the school. And you can insert other ministries in there as well. I don't want it to be only church and school, but that's where I have my most amount of experience. So we're going to go through each one of these. We're going to start with foundation and mission and vision. So to start, I do entire presentations just on shared mission and vision. So to talk a little bit about what a vision is the why of what you do. Why do you exist? Why do you If you never exist, if you stopped existing right now, would people know why you were there? And what do you hope to achieve? So it's really on my next slide, but it seems silly to wait, so I'm just going to ask you. How many of you know what your vision statement is? So, some of you, good. How many don't know your vision statement, but you know you have one?
I know we have one. I've seen it. I remember it.
Good.
I don't memorize it.
How many people know for sure you don't have one in your church or school? Oh, well, everybody at least has one. That's good. It's a good place to start. Vision should be clear. So if you have a vision and you're like, what on earth does that mean? Or if you would share with your partner today, here, this is what our vision is, and they were like, wow, that's pretty complicated. That's too big of a vision. Or not too big, but it's not explaining what your vision is. So it should be simple and easily accessible for lots of people. The most important part that I feel in a vision is that it should be directional. So it should guide you towards, it should guide your decisions in a way toward your vision. Whew. That was a little confusing in my head. You should be able to live this vision. You should be able to refer to the vision. All of the decisions that you're making throughout the day, you should be able to run through that filter of your vision. Now, for those of you who are working right now, you understand that the time it takes to run one decision through a vision process, you just don't have the time to do that. So you do need to work in some intentional time to think through at least your big picture decisions, to say, are we doing what we say is the most important thing to us? Because sometimes you get into the forest and you can't see the vision. You can't see the forest for the trees. You just get so stuck. And I have to say, I have felt that way the past 2 months. Since we came back from Christmas break, I have done nothing but put fires out. I have had COVID things, I've had people quit, I've had parents mad on both sides of every issue you can imagine. I've had a governor who changed the mask policy. It seems like it's constant. And so I found being here has allowed me a couple of minutes for some space. I was actually I was emailing my senior pastor, and I was like, you're in trouble because I'm on an airplane by myself and I can come up with all kinds of ideas when I'm given some quiet downtime. But it allowed me to think about, hey, what do I need to do differently when I walk back into my building? Luckily, we have Monday off on Tuesday. Some real life examples. So where did your vision come from? The process at my church and school is we had a vision, and then what we did was we kind of ditched it. I don't even remember what the old vision is. Harry, do you remember? So we kind of ditched it. And we started with the entire congregation. And people just gave out ideas. And then little by little, we narrowed it and narrowed it and narrowed it and narrowed it until we came to the vision that we have now, which is that all may know the love of Jesus, with all being capitalized, A-L-L. That came from a congregation member. So it's definitely, one, everybody knows what it is because our pastor says it at the end of every single service. And two, it had buy-in into it because everybody had a place in that system of when we came up with the vision. We have a one ministry concept, so our church and school and all the other ministries that we have are all one ministry. So the school has the same vision statement as the church and as the church does. I don't think that's necessarily essential, but it would be important to understand the other's vision. So if you would choose to do a different one, that would be something that you'd want to talk about, and of course you wouldn't want to have conflicting visions. I find in churches, it's actually, lots of churches do have vision statements, which is good. And then I wanted to mention displaying your vision or making it or saying it over and over and over again. Our pastor literally has said it at every church service since we came up with the vision, since we rewrote it. And that way, every single person knows it. He mentions it in sermons. We talk about it we have annual meetings. We talk about it at our meetings. At our directors' meetings, he brings us back to that all the time. All the time. So I want you to find that person you were talking with earlier today, and I want you to talk about the vision that you have in your church and school. So talk about if you have it, if you know it, share it with each other, and then how you display it or promote it, if you will. Okay, you have 1 minute. Short. Join with them if you want. She came in a little bit later, so yeah. Thank you. God, we've already talked for 20 minutes. Wrap it up. Hey, Harry. I'm sorry. Emma needs me, and so I told her to call you. So will you find out what she actually needs? I have a 17-year-old. Do you have her number? Just check on her. Okay. I just looked at the clock and realized we're already in 20 minutes, so I gotta stop talking so much. The last thing I want to say about vision, though, before we move on, is that this isn't a one-size-fits-all sort of deal. So you might have heard a vision today that you're like, oh, wow, that's a great vision. But it's so particular, and it should be a personal thing to your congregation and to your group of people that you're working with. So that's why there's different sunglasses up there. This is my favorite slide, because I like the sunglasses. Okay, communication. You guys mentioned communication. Well, actually, you mentioned vision, too, because you were talking about working together for a goal. And that's part of that visionary leadership. So the other thing we wanted to talk about is communication. And you can think of that very easily when you're talking about teams. When you're talking about a baseball team or a basketball team or a hockey team or a football team, they all have to be able to communicate. They have to be able to communicate behind the scenes, like when they're practicing, and they have to be able to communicate when they're on the stage, if you will. I went to a Disney presentation earlier this week, and they talk about on stage and off stage. But they have to be able to communicate during the game itself. Now, do all football players get along with each other? No. So, and that's important, because in church work, sometimes we think we should all get along perfectly. And it just doesn't happen that way. We're all sinners. We all fall short of the grace of God. What we have to do is to be able to find our common ground, which is why that vision is so important. There are people on my team that I don't go out to have drinks with after work, and there are some people that I might. But it's more important for you guys to share that vision and work together. So I want to give you permission to not like everybody. I think that's important, to give yourself a little bit of grace in that as well. With communication, you do need two people to communicate. And sometimes you just can't make that other person do it. But you have to be able to have a way to work around that. Some of those are critical conversations, whether it's with the entire team or with that person one-on-one. Like, hey, I don't feel like we're understanding each other. Our team has chosen to go through something called the Enneagram. How many people know about the Enneagram? Oh, good. I was super, I was so super, what's the word? Distrustful of it, because I had taken different Enneagrams and gotten different numbers, and I kept thinking, this is stupid. I complained to Harry every day because his office used to be beside me. Then he moved, probably because of this. But I complained about it all the time. I was like, this is stupid. And he's the one who thought of the idea, because he was like, I really love the Enneagram. And then I was like, okay, Michelle, you're going to have to lean into this. So I took the Enneagram, and we have gone through a book together. We've done training together. And it has truly been a blessing to our team. It has brought us together because I think only two of us have the same number. But what the Enneagram shows is who you are and how you react to things that come at you. And that's really helpful. Understanding who you are is just as important as understanding who the other person is, and also knowing that they're just different. So I'm going to tell a funny story. Well, it might be funny. When I was very young, much younger than now, I had just gotten married, and I went to my in-laws' house, and they wanted me to do something. Like, I had always taken my towel after I took a shower when I was a kid and put it into the dirty clothes. It was just what I did. Like, there was just this thing that I did. I went to their house. His mother actually yelled at me for putting my towel away, and she said I was wasteful and that I was, I don't know, disrespectful, whatever she said. I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, this is what I've always, my entire life, it's been 21 years, this is what I've been trained to do. That's how your team is too. So sometimes they have reactions to things, and you're like, why on earth would you do that? Why would you do it that way? You have to understand that they have as much history as you do. They have a reason for however they're acting. And the important part is to go back to that vision. You can tell I'm a vision person. Because that's where your common ground can start. I'm a little off topic. I told Harry I'd never get through this whole presentation. I knew it. Communication needs to be clear. So the last thing, the thing that's always going to bring down a team are people who talk behind each other's backs. If you don't go directly to the person when you're having an issue. Now, in my life, I have learned I also need to pause before I go back to that person. If I go right away, it's not going to be a very open conversation. I'm going to get angry. They're going to get defensive. You know how that goes. So I have worked myself with anything. If a parent emails me, I don't email right back. If a teacher's upset about something, I try to listen and then come back with a solution. I'm a problem solver. So when somebody gives me a problem, I'm going to solve it like that. I can solve problems all day long. And sometimes people don't like that about me. So you have to know that about yourself. And communication needs to be clear, and you need to not be afraid. The vision has to be more important than anything else. So you don't be afraid to have those hard conversations when you disagree about something. In the end, it's going to come back to be even better. Harry and I feel, have a very good working relationship. That doesn't mean we agree on every single thing. And there are moments when I have to share something that I'm feeling, or he has to share something that he's feeling. It strengthens our relationship to be able to get to the other side of that. Because we both know that we care deeply about our ministries and what we're doing. And then you have to make it intentional. I have to intentionally go to my senior pastor's office. I have to intentionally go to the way our organization is structured is we have a senior pastor. We're under policy-based governance. He is in charge of all of the ministries. He has 5 directors under him, 6 directors under him, and each of us run our own ministries. So there's no other directors above other directors. It's only our senior pastor. So I have to make sure I'm intentionally touching with all of those directors, just on a friendly kind of like, hey, how'd it go today? Hey, what you working on? Just to connect. You know, that sort of communication. That's a different kind of communication than intentionally having a meeting, which we're going to talk about what the ministry is at the church and school that you are, where you are. Meeting structure. So it's important to intentionally plan for times to communicate. So at King of Glory, we have weekly meetings with the operation. It's an ops meeting that just talks about the week. What's going on. We are doing some renovations, so we get an update from our operations director on that. Hey, this isn't working, that's not working. Hey, if you hear about this, send them to me, whatever it happens to be. And we also go through our calendar. We have lots of outside people who come in and use our facilities, so we talk about that as well. We have worship meetings. That's a smaller group of people who deal with worship, and they make decisions and talk about worship. Again, these are weekly meetings. So we have worship and ops every week. We have a directors meeting once a month. Now, sometimes after the ops meeting, our senior pastor says, I'd like the directors to stay for a minute. And then we have like a little mini directors meeting. But as far as the structure of the meeting, we know that once a month we're all going to pull together and talk. That meeting is geared towards big picture vision. So, hey, let's look out a couple months. What do we need to think about? We need to come up with new critical targets. Those sorts of conversations. Sometimes we talk about worship, especially if it's near Advent, Christmas, and those sorts of times. We already talked about formal and informal. We should always do these communications with love. We're all here for the love of Jesus. And so remembering that as we walk humbly into conversations is also important. And then ways of communicating. Don't use a bullhorn if you don't have to, metaphorically speaking. And know the people you're communicating with, know how they receive communication the best. Emails are hard. You know, I can write an email and not mean anything by it, and the person reading it can take it a completely different way. So in-person communication tends to work better. but sometimes you have to do it by email. Sometimes texting works really well with people. However, some people find texting to be rude and disruptive. So you just have to know that about each other. There really isn't a right or wrong way. It's just a matter of what works best for all the people that are involved. I want you guys to take a second. We have to make this like really a minute long. And talk to that person that you found about what your current meeting structures are, how you feel communication is going, and just one way you feel that can be improved at your own site. You might need 2 minutes to do all that, but okay, break. All right. I'm so sorry. Are you?
She just wanted to check where her appointment was for her booster. She and Kevin were at one CVS and they didn't know if it was the right one. She said, I'm just going to go in and see if they'll take it.
It's the Target. Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for dealing with that. Find a beeper. I want to take just a second to see if anybody would share. I need a couple examples of good communication at your program or your school or church, and a couple of examples of some things to work on. Who wants to share a good one? Something that's going well. Come on.
Well, ours is a little different because we
Okay.
have a very, very small school setting. We have
Okay.
one pre-K class, one preschool class,
Okay.
and a toddler room and an infant room. So
Aw.
there's 4 teachers. There's 4 lead teachers,
Mhm.
and then we probably have about 8 assistants and aides. So we don't meet regularly because we have such a small group. It's easy for us to just communicate. We can communicate one-on-one with our director, or we communicate through text message because that works out. But yeah, our senior staff, like the pastor and the director and all that, they meet weekly.
Okay.
Like our school itself, we don't really need to meet regularly because we're just so small and it's easy to communicate amongst us.
Great. So they have found some ways that work for them. Again, not one type is going to fit everybody. So because I'm sharing what our organizational structure is, I'm not saying that yours should be the same. It's just it should be a thoughtful organizational structure. Okay. Yes.
Just with communication, we just started something about a month ago. We use Slack for our communication now, and Slack is used by a number of tech companies, big companies.
Cool.
We've got about 70 employees, full-time and part-time, and we were really struggling with communicating with like our preschool aides who are part-time, our college kids who come in and help with our child care. And so Slack is basically puts all your communication in one place. So we tell everybody, don't text, don't email, for inter-office work stuff. Put it all in Slack, and it also helps with flexible schedule, church schedule. When you're off work, you just turn off Slack, and you don't have to get a text message in the middle of your day off or
If I can ask something selfishly, did you have anybody who had trouble making that transition?
Oh my goodness, some of the teachers hate my guts for it. Because we launched it a month ago.
All the time,
In the
you know.
middle- we launched it a month ago in the middle of COVID, all this, and all of a sudden they're going, you're doing more change. And they're just like, why, I can't, and their brains were wired around checking email and finding how email works. And Slack is slightly different in the organization of it. But they're like, tell me how it's good. And I'm like, okay, funerals. We have funerals, they pop up, you've got 3 days to get everything organized and ready. The pastors meet with the family. He's not thinking about, do we need to live stream this funeral? He doesn't think about, are they going to do a meal or not? Do we need to move the gym, the PE class out so we can do the dinner?
Right.
But once you have a funeral channel, all your communication dumps in there. And so while he's meeting with the family, he's adding with his phone, they don't want a meal, they do want it live streamed, I see it instantly. He doesn't
Cool.
have to remember to email me that, or did he email the principal this? It really, think of it like Facebook with groups.
Yeah.
You set up groups within Slack and only invite in the people that need to know.
Yeah. I really like that idea, especially as you get larger. So he said that his group is 70 people. We just underwent a building project, and so we're a little bit more spread out. And so I think that could be super beneficial. And it doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you all the mistakes that I make. I think I communicate, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, what are you? I didn't know anything about that. So a central way of doing that communication is a great idea. Okay, how about a couple challenges people are having? Yes?
Being time because of short staffed in the school for the director to come meet with the church side.
Yep. Yes?
We meet as ministry staff on Mondays, and we feel like then, we were just talking because she's the office manager, so it's sometimes like, we think it gets there, but sometimes you're like, okay, there's stuff we miss, or whatever, even, I like the Slack idea. But,
Yeah.
But we've tried a couple different things, and we're kind of trying to reorganize again after coming back after COVID.
Yeah.
It's like trying to put the pieces together again.
Well, and it can be difficult. I so sympathize with people who are having staffing issues right now. And it's something that you have to be able to protect as well. And so at our operations meetings, we have a couple people from the school who attend. So if one of us can't go, the other one gets the information and brings it back. I often will, if I can't make something, I'll inappropriately text Harry and say, Harry, what's happening at this meeting? Just to stay in that loop. But having that structure of meetings or the system of communication is really important to think through. Another thing that our senior pastor just switched to this year was having one-on-one meetings with every director each month. So we have weekly meetings and a couple different monthly meetings. So we meet all together as directors once a month, and I have time one-on-one with my senior pastor once a month. Something that's really helpful is I he lets us formulate that agenda. So he doesn't tell me what we're talking about. I tell him what we're talking about, which is really nice. So I go into our little shared Google Doc and say, here are some bullet points of things I want to mention to you. A lot of times it's just updates, but what it prevents is from me popping into his office 400 times in a month, because I know, hey, this can wait. This isn't an emergency. He can know this in a couple of weeks. And so it keeps that, it makes the communication more efficient. Okay, organizational structure. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. Who is on your bus? So thinking about what your organizational structure is, it's so important to have the right people in the right seats on your bus. Sometimes that's hard when you're in the middle of a staffing crisis and you're tired of doing 3 jobs. Sometimes you hire somebody that's 80% good for your bus. But it's just going to cost you time in the long run. So making sure you've got those right people and not being afraid to change those roles. So I have been in situations where we've had somebody on our team, but it's like, well, maybe their gifts really lie in this other area, and we can shift it a little bit. So not being afraid to change some of those roles on the bus or what those people are responsible for. And then thinking about organizational structure intentionally. I mentioned that we all are responsible for our own ministries. However, we follow a common vision. And so it's kind of like a football team. Not everybody goes to the offensive lines meetings or practices. But everybody knows that their overall job is to protect that quarterback. And so not everybody knows exactly what I do in the school, because that would be crazy. They don't need to know all of those details. I'm responsible for the school, so I do the school. And then we come back together and plan those big picture things together. So not bogging down communication with a organizational structure that doesn't work very well. I think it's incredibly important for school directors or some representative of the school to have a seat at the table. So I have a seat, as the school director, I have a seat at the table of the church and school to be a part of the conversations of long-term planning, of what our goals are going to be, I know what the themes are for our worship year, for our ministry year. All of that, I'm a part of all those conversations. Do I need to know that for my day-to-day operation? Maybe not. But it's helpful sometimes if I have an idea, because I happen to see what the theme was, of a family event that we might be able to do to connect the church families to connect the school families with the church. So that's how it works well, is I have a bigger picture knowledge of all the things that are going on, and vice versa. So does our operations director really need to know that I have Valentine's Day parties next week? Maybe not. But sometimes he can glean information like, oh, wait, they're going to have a Valentine's Day party, which means it's going to be a mess, which means I have to pay people to be here longer because they have to clean all that stuff up. So, it's just helpful that way so that there aren't as many surprises. But having a seat at that table and a voice has been very, very valuable for that church-school partnership and for our entire team. Knowing what your role is. So my senior pastor likes to say the phrase, stay in your lane, often. So sometimes I come to him with an idea and he's like, out of your lane a little bit. So that's the downside of having a seat at the table. Sometimes you have to have somebody who's willing to say, and I say this all the time, I'm just throwing ideas out there. You don't have to do any of my ideas. I'm an idea person. Here's 500 ideas. So I have to be able to say, okay, I'm throwing these ideas out. I seriously don't have skin in the game I'm not going to get mad if Harry doesn't do every idea I come up with. That's all he'd do, is ideas of my ideas. And then the intention intentionality of having positions that connect the church and the school. So Harry's position, this isn't the only thing he does. He does lots and lots and lots of things. But one of the things on his job description is to be a bridge between the church and the school. So he and I work a lot together on activities and events and ideas and, hey, how do we get this group connected in? He was out of town last Sunday, and I saw one of my school families at our Sunday school, which we call Base Camp. So I wrote to him and said, hey, Graylin's family was here. First of all, he knew exactly who I was talking about. He knew who Graylin was because he's in the school and knows them very well. In our structure, our senior pastor, who does make time to come down to the school and meet the school families, he's got 800 other things to do. So having Harry as that bridge, Harry has formed connections with the school teachers and the school families so that they feel comfortable going to him. So I sent him their information, and he can then connect with that school family. So sure, I also do that, but there's something powerful about having two people working on it, because it also could work in opposite. So if we have a new family to the church, Harry can say, hey, did you know we have a preschool? And then it connects us back the other direction as well. The best part is that we can build off of each other's strengths, which is a really valuable role to have. His role is new. So a couple of years ago, our senior pastor really was the one doing that. Or we have another DCE that does older children's ministry, so junior high and above. And that person used to have control over all of the ministry, and so she and I would work together. But again, she just had so many other things to do. So it was, although we did work really well together. Another thing to think about when you're talking about organizational structure is I can stand up here and tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that I have an amazing senior pastor. And if he were standing here, he would say, I have an amazing school director. We have to challenge each other that it's not always going to be either one of us here in this spot. So we also have to put things into place to say this is important enough that it's not going to be just up to Bill Harmon and Michelle Clawberg. We have to build this into the culture of the organization, if you will. So one shift that we made is on my budget, I actually put in activities to set aside money for church school connection events. So if I were no longer the director and somebody had to look at my budget, they were like, oh, well, this family advent must be really important. She has X amount of dollars in here for that. So that's one of those protections. Now, sure, could somebody come in and change it? Of course. Anytime you have a leadership change, they may change those things. But building it into the culture that's the expectation that the church and school are going to work together on some things is important. And having congregation members involved is also one of those things that can help with that long-term planting of seeds. The more people that know that the school and church are connected, the better off it is. And sadly, or greatly, talking about it from the pulpit, talking about the school at worship, whether it's in the prayers. So the school is in the prayers, I think, almost every week. Or if there's something happening. So when we had our NLSA visit happening. So we prayed for the NLSA visit. And what that does is it helps to educate the congregation. So then they understand what that means. They understand the work that goes into it. Keeping that in front of the congregation is really important on the opposite side of that. I have personally made the decision to be at church on every Sunday. I come to all 3 worship services. I do that so that people know who I am. And so they can say, oh, Michelle, I have a quick question for you, which is usually I am hoarding something and now I want to give it away. So do you and the school want it? Which I always take, whether I know I'm going to keep it or not, because that connection is important. And the next time they might have something more valuable. You never know. People throw away crazy things. But they know who I am. They know that Michelle Clawberg is the director of the school. And vice versa. So it's important for my senior pastor to be in front of my families. And so he plans that into his schedule. It sounds stupid, but you have to write it down. Visit school families. So he plans that in. I do intentional invitations as the school director to our directors and say, hey, next week's Read Across America, we would love for you to come into a classroom and read. Here are some sign-ups. And to be honest, a lot of my teachers who have been there for a while, they just send them directly. They'll just send the links and people will sign up to do that. COVID has brought a hard stop to a lot of those things, but we're gradually getting back into inviting other people into classrooms. But for, probably 18 months, we intentionally didn't have other people in there. So it'll be exciting to be able to bring some of that back. I want you guys to break up again in your groups, talk about your organization and what your role is in that organization. Okay, go. 1 minute. This is a short one. Join in. Together. Okay, after talking for a long time, we are now at events. I think one of the big mistakes lots of church and schools make is they start with events. They're like, oh, well, if we plan an event together, we'll have a partnership. It's not really how it works. But there are some really cool events that you can have together. Make it a plan. Events, as much as I would love for them to just pop out of the air, I have to always remind myself that I need a plan to make this event happen. Don't overextend yourself. I know when I come back from conferences like this, I'm like, oh, let's go do all of it. Harry knows that he's laughing back there. He's like, oh, that's so Michelle. And it's important for you to say, okay, what is the most important event we can do together? And let's do it really well. Thinking about your events, make sure your events are connecting to your vision. And then planning some sort of intentional event to connect your church and school. So So instead of having you guys break up into your groups, because I think this will be fun for the whole group to share, let's share a couple of really cool events that you've done to connect your church and school at your location.
So we do an Easter event, we call it the Easter Extravaganza, and we're really lucky. We have a giant soccer field that we set up different stations for, and then our church does Road to Resurrection in the classrooms upstairs. So our school families, who mostly have church homes
Right.
already, can come participate in the activities, but then they can still go do Road to Resurrection and get kind of the Lutheran perspective.
Great idea. So tell me how that is organized. Does your church,
It used to be, I'm early childhood director. I used to plan the entire event and invite the church to do it. A year ago, we hired a director of family ministries and a director of children and youth ministries.
Oh, cool.
And thankfully, because I had a full plate already, they kind of took that over for me.
awesome.
It was a challenge for me to give that up, though. Because
Yeah.
It went from being a school event where we invited the church to now it's a church event where we invite the school. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but
Oh, no, it
it's
is.
different. So we're still trying to work to find that balance.
Yeah, and that's where that partnership and those communications can really help. I will say that one of the hardest parts of this is who pays for it. So,
I'm lucky. We split it right down the middle, and there's no arguing about that. But
well, that's good. Or who do we invite? Who's our primary audience here? Are we just doing it for the school, or, so I understand those conversations can be difficult.
Michelle, that triggered a thing in my brain. Is your budget unified across this church and school, so it's basically each department has part of that budget, or is it lopsided? Because I think that really makes a difference in our vision and our foundational pieces. When our church really got to the idea that it's a unified budget, it's Messiah Church and school, that saved a lot of headaches, because I tried administrating under school budget, cost per blah, 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 and then church had all the money they wanted, it seemed. Depends on which side you're on.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yes.
to unify that budget is a big key in the vision and organization structure too.
Thank you for bringing that up. We are in the process of trying to figure that out. So we started talking about it a couple of years ago, and then COVID hit, and to be honest, that idea just kind of got pushed. So right now we have two budgets, but mine doesn't technically roll up under theirs. So I've got my budget, and the church has their budget. Yeah. So, but that's something that we're looking at bringing together for that very reason.
Because that helps in those event planning things of saying,
Yep.
it's just, even coming to this,
Yep.
it's just unified, we're all in the happy camp, and church and school both are here.
Right.
And I'm at the same place, and I'm technology and communications, so you totally skipped over me when you introduced everybody.
Oh, sorry. I knew we'd forget somebody.
Other, I like to be other, because then I can just say, oh, I don't have to go to that meeting. But language-wise, what we have done to bring the groups together too is we've tried, and I'm thrilled to see my pastor use that language. We don't talk about the word members. We really call ourselves the Messiah family.
Nice.
We've got family members who attend our school but don't go to our church. Our preschool, we've got a large percent that don't attend any church at all. And so when we have like a fall festival, we say, hey, this is for the Messiah family. And
I love that.
welcome to that. And it doesn't feel like Messiah Church and school. It's like, no, I don't go to church there. And I'm in the preschool. Does that count as school?
Right. Is that mine?
It takes away the confusion.
Well, and I will say that even where we are, where I think we have a pretty good partnership, we do have school families who are like, well, that's for the church. That's not for us. That's great. That's a great idea. Okay, one more idea, although I could do this all day. Yes?
We have our big fundraiser every year. We do a big Christmas event. So how we present that is we present it as a fundraiser for our school. Like this past year, we were using money to help improve our playground. But what we did was we had a silent auction. So we invited the church members to donate items to the silent auction. Like a couple members of the youth group donated babysitting time. Like we had women knit Afghans or donate other items to the silent auction. And then we invited the church families and the preschool families to come together all to one large fun event. And then Pastor spoke about the Christmas story and all
Cool.
that. But yeah, so it was a fun way to get everybody all in one place.
Right.
The parents of the preschoolers and all that, they're always on the school end, and very rarely are they ever on the church end. So it was
Right.
nice to bring them over.
Cool. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our church school connections. I mentioned Family Advent. We started this probably 7 years ago, where we did a Family Advent service, and it was really from the DCE that was there at the time and myself working together. It was not considered a school event. However, there were a lot of school families that came. But what happened during COVID was we couldn't do that anymore. So Harry and I were presented with a different problem. Like, how do we do Family Advent when we can't gather together? So what we came up with was it's a Advent box. And so families are given a box, and they have 4 weeks worth of activities, scripture readings, and then he and I put together a video that goes with every single week. And the first year we did it, we learned a lot. And then we switched it up some. And this one is open to church families, school families, and our community. And what we found is that our community numbers really went much higher this year. So we went from handing out 200 boxes last year to 300 boxes this year. And so that goes back to that money thing. So it's like, but the boxes cost X amount of dollars, and who's going to pay for all that? And fortunately, our school and church will figure that out. But that was a really cool combination activity that really was for the entire community. Our chapel connections, I'm sure lots of you do this, where you have your chapels, pastors or other church workers coming in to lead chapel or be at chapel. So we have that, of course. Harry and my curriculum coordinator, whose name is Tammy, she's here somewhere, work together on what that looks like. One of the things that we are very proud of is that we use the same curriculum for our chapel as we do for our Sunday school. And so that is a nice flow. So parents know they've learned about David and Goliath during the school day, and then on Sunday they're going to hear it again from a little bit of a different perspective. That repetitiveness for the kids is always good, and the connection, that intentional connection between the two of us is really nice as well. It also helps with resources, so we use the same curriculum, So in the past, we've used Orange. Now we've shifted to Groups Simply Loved. And I like both of them for very different reasons. Orange is a little bit bigger. We found our volunteers were more intimidated by Orange. My teachers really liked it. They liked the little videos, but Simply Loved also has videos with it and songs. If you've ever done VBS through Group, it feels similar because it's the same people writing it.
So that you use Group at school?
We use Group at school, and we use it in the Sunday school program. The hardest part for the school teachers is that the school week is longer than a day. And so a lot of the curriculums are written for Sunday. But fortunately, I have a curriculum coordinator who can help them supplement that throughout the week. So, so it has worked out really well, but we do really like that curriculum. And it's not as expensive. Orange is pretty expensive. Families. No idea why I put that there. And I already mentioned this, but using a calendar to calendar your time to see each other. So if you're not a member of the church that you are serving at, calendaring a couple of Sundays to be there so that your church family as well as the congregation members see you, and vice versa. And then shared celebrations. When you're talking about shared celebrations, it seems so easy, but it has to be genuine. There has to be a genuine flavor of sharing that celebration. And that all comes from all that other work that you've done together. So communication and the structure and how you treat each other, the mission that you have, the shared visions that you've got, all of that works in conjunction with making this celebration very, 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 very meaningful. I've already mentioned saying it in a worship service, even if it's at the beginning during announcements or during a prayer, to do some sort of a celebration. We do communications out to the community either via Facebook, any sort of social media platform that you use is a good place to do celebrations. And then, of course, internal celebrations. So just celebrating each other, like, hey, wow, that was a rough week. Or we made it through Christmas. Yay for us. Those sorts of just moments to breathe and be together, to look at the things that went well and to think about, hey, what could happen next time? Which is what I like to do, is important to do, to take the time to do that. Real life examples. That was an old slide. I did them differently this morning because that's how I do. I kind of rolled this into my last slide, but doing it with each ministry, as a pastor, you have to be careful. To make sure you're thinking about all the different ministries that are under you, to make sure that you're highlighting them and celebrating their successes as well. Our congregation is one that has lots of people leading in lots of different areas. And to be honest, they're kind of used to doing that and doing their own celebrations. So that is also fun as well. The last time you get together with the person that you're with, I want you guys to pray with and for each other. I want to encourage you to take the other person's email address or name, either connect with them in the next couple of weeks to just see how they're doing, or keep them on your prayer list as you're praying at home. Prayer is such an important part of what we do every day. Praying together as a staff. Whether it's in person at all of the meetings that I told you about, we pray, which is a nice reminder as to why all of us are here. And after you guys get done praying, I'm here to answer questions for you. I'm going to put my email up there in case you want to email me. And then I brought with me from Virginia peanut butter cups because for some reason I had a momentary lapse and forgot how much food they have here. So if you want some peanut butter cups, they're in the back. I'm not taking them home, so you guys should do that. Thank you all for being here with me today. Please take a couple minutes to pray before you go.